For years, bread has been blamed for the problem. Weight increase, low energy, digestive issues, blood sugar levels rise sharply. Bread eventually became the villain of the modern diet. But here's something most folks never hear. Bread is not the issue. The way bread is created. Across the United Kingdom, millions of people eat bread every day that bears little resemblance to the nourishment humans have eaten for ages. It seems familiar. It smells pleasant. It even tastes good in the moment. But underneath the softness and shelf life is a loaf designed for speed, consistency, and profit, not for your health. That's why many individuals feel bloated after eating a sandwich. Why energy crashes occur an hour later. Why hunger returns much sooner than expected. The problem is not wheat. For the majority of people, it is gluten-free. It is ultra-processed bread that has been chemically altered and robbed of its original structure. However, not all bread follows that path. Across the UK, there are brands that are quietly doing things the old way, using time rather than chemicals, fermentation rather than shortcuts, simple ingredients rather than lengthy chemical listings. These breads aid digestion, maintain blood sugar levels, and leave you feeling satiated rather than sluggish. The problem is, they're simple to overlook. They are overpowered by louder labels, deceptive marketing, and the appearance of freshness. So, in this breakdown, we are cutting through the noise. You'll discover which 9 UK bread brands are truly worth eating for your health, which breads to avoid completely, and how to identify rotten bread in seconds. Once you witness the difference, you'll never look at bread the same way again. Before we get into specific brands, we need to understand what makes bread healthy, which has little to do with keywords on the packaging. 3 things describe real bread. First, the ingredients. Traditional bread requires flour, water, salt, and thyme. That is it. When you find emulsifiers, preservatives, dough improvers, or extensive chemical names, the bread has already been contaminated. Second, fermentation. Time is not an option. Slow fermentation allows natural microorganisms to digest carbohydrates and gluten before you eat the bread. This makes it easier to digest, enhances mineral absorption, and results in more consistent blood sugar levels. Fast bread omits this step entirely. The third step is to process. Highly treated bread is intended to remain artificially soft and persist for days or weeks. Proper bread hardens over time. That is normal. This structure slows digestion and keeps you full for longer. Every nutritious bread on this list adheres to those guidelines. Every bread you should avoid ignores them. Once you understand this paradigm, the distinction between good and bad bread becomes clearer. Let us begin with the most common starting point for folks who want to eat better bread. Jason's sourdough is one of the most essential breads available in UK shops today, despite the fact that it does not make a big deal about itself. It resembles a standard sliced bread, which is why many people underestimate it. What distinguishes Jason's is that it truly earned the term sourdough. Unlike many store breads, which utilise flavouring or vinegar to mimic sourness, this bread is prepared by slow fermentation. Time is allotted to complete the work. That procedure is more important than most people think. Long fermentation degrades complex carbs and softens gluten structures before the bread reaches your plate. The end result is bread that is far easier to digest and far less likely to create bloating or a heavy lethargic sensation. Jason's ingredient list is surprisingly straightforward. No emulsifiers. There are no chemical improvers. There are no preservatives used to increase shelf life at the price of digestion. In terms of health, this means having more consistent energy levels, having better intestinal comfort, and feeling content without eating too much. For many folks, this is the first bread they can eat on a regular basis without feeling uncomfortable. Jason's value stems primarily from his accessibility. It is inexpensive, readily available, and does not need a visit to an artisan bakery. For most people, this is the bread that demonstrates that true sourdough does make a difference. Waitrose Duchy. Organic bread frequently flies under the radar. It does not use fashionable terminology or make dramatic health claims, but it does represent a significant improvement above regular grocery loaves. The first advantage is organic production. Duchy organic breads are produced under stringent guidelines that prohibit additives, processing aids, and pesticide exposure. That alone eliminates many of the hidden components present in cheaper bread. Another significant difference is structure. These loaves do not aim for excessive tenderness. The flour keeps more of the grain's original essence, slowing digestion and allowing for a more consistent release of energy. For many people, this manifests as fewer mid-morning crashes and a decreased desire to snack. Duchy organic bread is also a good choice for regular meals. It's constant, familiar, and easy to keep to, which is more important than perfection. Because of its dependability, it is a viable long-term option, particularly for families. However, This bread still follows the supermarket paradigm. Fermentation times are better than average, although they are not usually lengthy or traditional enough to fully exploit the grain's potential. To understand why this is important, consider the type of bread that the majority of households still consume. Hovis is one of the most well-known bread brands in the UK, and this familiarity is precisely the problem. Most ordinary Hovis, soft white and brown sliced loaves, are designed for speed, softness and shelf life, rather than nutrients. To get that pillow-soft texture, the dough is heavily processed with emulsifiers, preservatives and dough improvers. Fermentation is hurried. The grain structure gets taken away. What's left is bread that digests quite quickly. In the body, this manifests as rapid blood sugar increases, followed by energy collapses. Hunger returns rapidly. Snacking gets more frequent. Many people report bloating or pain after eating this type of bread on a regular basis. There is little natural fibre structure left to slow digestion or promote fullness. The bread serves to fill space rather than to meet nutritional needs. This is not about blaming the brand. It is about recognising formulations. These loaves are intended for regularity and convenience, not health. When you compare how this bread makes you feel to properly fermented sourdough, the distinction is impossible to overlook. That contrast is exactly what makes the next bread stand out. M and S collection sourdough is where many individuals discover that not all commercial bread responds similarly in the body. On the surface, it appears familiar, yet the procedure is vastly different. Fermentation is the important improvement here. Unlike regular loaves, which are rushed through manufacture, this sourdough is allowed time. Natural fermentation progressively breaks down carbs and gluten, making the bread more digestible and less taxing on blood sugar. Many people experience less bloating, heaviness, and more consistent energy after switching to this bread. That is not a placebo effect. It's the biological distinction between fast and fermented breads. The ingredient list is also much cleaner than usual. There is no reliance on emulsifiers or chemical enhancers to increase texture or shelf life. Flavour is naturally created during fermentation, not added later. The depth of flavour also influences how individuals eat. Portions shrink, meals are slowing down, satisfaction grows. While this sourdough is still manufactured on a large scale, it represents a significant upgrade for anyone who shops primarily at supermarkets. It also paves the way for loaves that go above and beyond standard procedures. Gale's Bakery sourdough is founded on characteristics that modern bread has mostly abandoned: time, simplicity, and restraint. This is slow-cooked bread created with protracted fermentation that allows natural bacteria to perform what chemistry normally does. The ingredient list is short: flour, water, salt, and thyme. No unnecessary additions, no artificial boosters. There are no preservatives designed to support rapid manufacture. This is abundantly evident in terms of health. Digestion is less stressful. Energy remains more steady. You feel fuller with fewer pieces, not because you're depriving yourself, but because the bread is actually more gratifying. Many folks who struggle with traditional bread find this far more tolerable. The fermentation process degrades starches and gluten before you eat the bread, minimizing the strain on your digestive system. This type of bread also causes a behavioral alteration. You eat more deliberately. Meals are slowing down. Bread no longer serves as a background filler and is once again incorporated into the meal. While Gale's is still an expanding bakery rather than a small independent enterprise, it maintains traditional processes admirably, and it demonstrates what truly delicious bread is capable of when shortcuts are eliminated. This is where branding may discreetly deceive even the most cautious shoppers. Marks & Spencer sells some very fine sourdoughs, but their ordinary white and brown sliced loaves are comparable to other mass-produced breads. Despite their luxury appearance, these breads are nevertheless manufactured with rapid fermentation, refined flour, and texture-enhancing chemicals. Softness is not due to time or expertise. It is engineered. The health effects are predictable. Digestion occurs fast. Blood sugar levels surge and fall quickly. Hunger returns sooner than it should, and many individuals feel sluggish right after eating. The main issue here is contrast. When you eat these loaves alongside M&S sourdough, the difference is clear. One works on your body. The other behaves like highly processed bread. This is why ingredient listings are more important than brand names. A trustworthy vendor does not guarantee a nutritious bread. And once you understand this, it becomes easy to routinely make better decisions. These are the loaves made in store and supermarkets and served as fresh rustic bread. The scent, crust, and appearance all imply quality. The reality is quite different. Most supermarket bakery bread is delivered as pre-made dough, which is often frozen or partially baked off-site. It's intended for speed and consistency, not fermentation or nutrition. Additives and processing aids are commonly employed behind the scenes, even when they are not visible to customers. Because these breads are rarely fermented properly, they digest rapidly and provide minimal long-term satisfaction. Blood sugar levels rise quickly, hunger returns rapidly. Despite their appearance, they act similarly to ultra-processed bread once eaten. This is one of the most deceiving kinds of bread because it appears to be a healthier option. However, without time, simplicity, and fermentation, freshness means very little. Once you grasp this, the significance of authentic bread becomes impossible to dismiss. The healthiest bread option in the UK is not typically seen in a supermarket aisle. It is available in independent bakeries that adhere to the fundamentals of authentic bread. Real bread is prepared with flour, water, salt, and thyme. There's nothing else. There are no additives. There are no processing aids. There are no shortcuts concealed beneath labels. What distinguishes it is intention. Dough is carefully fermented, frequently by hand, to let natural bacteria to complete the transformation before baking. This technique improves digestibility, flavour, and fundamentally alters your body's response to bread. For many folks, this is the first time they have felt good about eating bread. Less bloating, more steady energy, better satiety. Bread no longer feels like a problem meal, but rather like nourishment. Independent bakers also want to utilise higher quality flour and traditional methods that retain the grain's inherent structure. The bread is consumed fresh, as it should be, rather than preserved for weeks. There is also something deeper here. Choosing fresh bread reconnects food to people, not factories. Bread becomes deliberate, and that alone influences how much and how frequently you consume it. When you know what to look for, poor bread becomes much easier to identify. First, review the ingredient list. Real bread should contain only a few ingredients. If the bread contains emulsifiers, preservatives, dough improvers, or long chemical names, it is intended for storage rather than digestion. Second, feel the texture. Bread that remains exceptionally soft for days is typically highly processed. Proper bread hardens over time. That is normal. Third, note how you feel after eating it. If you have frequent hunger pangs, energy crashes, or bloating, the bread is digesting too quickly and raising your blood sugar. Finally, avoid terms such as artisan, freshly baked, and sourdough style. Unless the bread is truly slow fermented and has a small ingredient list, these terms imply little. If the bread was prepared fast, it will digest rapidly, and this is generally the problem. But the main takeaway from this list is straightforward. Bread is not the enemy. Badly baked bread is. The healthiest alternatives you've seen all have the same underlying principles. Fewer ingredients, appropriate fermentation, and respect for the method. Breads to avoid do the reverse. They rely on speed, flexibility, and shortcuts. You don't have to completely revamp your diet to notice a difference. Even switching to healthier bread once or twice a week can improve digestion, regulate energy levels, and help you feel fuller without overeating. And once you understand how bread is manufactured, the option is clear. Your body reacts better to food that has been given time. If this breakdown was helpful, please let me know in the comments which bread you're switching to or eliminating. Share this with someone who still believes that all bread is the same. And if you want more honest, no-nonsense analysis like this, please like, subscribe, and enable notifications, because knowing what to look for makes finding better food much easier. Let me know what you think down below in the comments.